Gospel according to Matthew, the 5th chapter.
Glory to you, Lord.
You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how will it become salty again? It's good for nothing except to be thrown away and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city on top of a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. Instead, they put it on top of a lampstand, and it shines on all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before people, so they can see the good things you do and praise your Father who is in heaven. Don't even begin to think that I have come to do away with the law and the prophets. I haven't come to do away with them, but to fulfill them. I say to you very seriously that as long as heaven and earth exist, neither the smallest letter nor even the smallest stroke of a pen will be erased from the law until everything there becomes a reality. Therefore, whoever ignores one of the least of these commands and teaches others to do the same will be called the lowest in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever keeps these commands and teaches people to keep them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. I say to you that unless your righteousness is greater than the righteousness of the legal experts and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
So have any of you ever seen the Northern Lights? I see some hands going up. And my guess is, is there any way that it was around here? Have you ever been able, yes, Judy, okay. So every once in a while, or was this recently with, I'm just wondering, like light pollution, right, these days makes it so difficult to see many stars, much less the Northern Lights. I have not, since living in this part of Ontario, but as many of you know, I grew up in Saskatchewan, which is, even in Regina, which is where I grew up, in the southern part of the province, it's that much further north that we would, from time to time, see the Northern Lights. But for me, one of the most memorable times was when I was on a canoe trip in northern Saskatchewan on the Churchill River, which is, when we ended, it was about an hour's drive yet from La Ronge. So from Regina, we're talking like 7 hours north of Regina. This was with the Lutheran summer camp where I used to work. At the end of August, they always would run this canoe trip. It was 7 days, and we'd be way back in the bush. At the end of August, it's prime Northern Light season. As I said, the first day of this trip, we do like 17 kilometers across Lake Namiben. The next day would just be like a bunch of portages, something like 7 or 8 or 9 portages. But after those 2 days of really hard work, it was sort of easy sailing. You're on the river going downstream, and just quite enjoyable, more relaxing. But you're far away from city lights, far away from light pollution, so you get a really incredible view of the night sky. And so it was probably on the third or fourth night of that trip, a few of us noticed that the Northern Lights were coming out. So we made our way down to the water's edge, and this is Canadian Shield, right? So granite slabs where we found a place to lie down. And because we were far enough north, it was right overhead, right? We were laying down looking at the sky above us, and the brightest swirling green lights that I've ever been able to see before, dancing across the night sky. And the thing about the Northern Lights, if you have been blessed to see them, you know that it's unpredictable in their movements, right? They'll fade and then get brighter. And in this moment, like, it was the whole sky, right, from the tree line to the water's edge. And the few of us that were gathered there, we couldn't help but smile and laugh and gasp at the beauty, the wonder, the awe of these lights, of this moment. It was truly magnificent, and the kind of thing that really is not possible to put into words. You are the light of the world. This is what Jesus tells those who are gathered to listen to him teach. And this is continuing from what we heard last Sunday, the Beatitudes, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And if you remember last week, we talked about who that crowd was that had gathered to hear Jesus speak, right? These were the disciples, those who had left their families behind to follow him. These were the outcasts, people who had illnesses and diseases that had kind of pushed them to the outside of society, of their family. They'd come to Jesus looking for healing, looking for hope. And this is who Jesus is speaking to when he says, "You are the light of the world." And something that gets lost in translation because of the limits of our English language is the fact that the you, Jesus says, is a plural you, right? So I think if we were in the southern US, it'd be a lot easier to capture that, right? Jesus is saying something like, y'all are the light of the world. You, all of you together, right? This is not something about us as individuals, but as the community. This newly forming community Jesus is speaking to of misfits and outcasts. You, all of you together are a light that cannot be hidden. You together are a light that will shine in the dim places of the world. Over the course of the pandemic, our Eastern Synod, along with the Center for Spirituality and Media at Martin Luther University College, have been hosting webinars, facilitating conversations about the changing landscape of ministry and the church in these times. And they had their most recent one just this last week. It was on the topic of rostered leadership, so about pastors and deacons, how that role has changed in these last years. And they had 3 pastors on the panel, and one of the things they were asked to share was what signs of hope or success they see in their ministry. One of the panelists was Pastor Tula Van Gaspik from St. Philip's in Etobicoke. And I don't know, does anybody know Pastor Tula? A couple of, Lori and Brad. And I don't know, does anybody have any connections with St. Philip's and Etobicoke? I never know what connections there are. I don't see any hands going up. Okay. So I'll share just a little bit because it was 2 of her stories that just really hit something home for me, especially with this theme that we're thinking about this week. So one of the things that St. Philip's has been doing for several years is running a homework club for youth in their community, like a tutoring group. And where they are in Etobicoke, right next to the church, are a couple of large Toronto community housing buildings. So they have a lot of students who access this program who are from lower income families, from newcomer families to Canada. And so Pastor Tula told about how one of the students in this program from a newcomer family got caught shoplifting. And this family, they are not members of the church, but they didn't know what else to do, where to go. So the mom came to St. Philip's asking for help because that was where, because their son had been part of this program, they'd felt connection, there was a relationship, it was a place that felt safe, where there was some trust. And Pastor Tula was able then to accompany this family through that court process and help them get this youth diverted to a program that was a restorative program rather than a punitive one. So that was the first sign of hope that she shared. And the other one was this. And one of the other things that St. Philip's has been doing since 2016 is they run a good food market. They'd identified their neighborhood as being a food desert. There wasn't a grocery store nearby. There was a real lack of access to fresh, healthy food. So they started having this food market June through August of every year, partnering with Food Share Toronto to do that. And it's something that year over year has continued to grow. They are still doing this, and it's opened up partnerships too with other community groups and multi-faith groups as well. So the other sign of hope that she shared was how a Muslim family came to their church They had known about St. Philip's because of this presence in the community. And what they came to do is they asked to light prayers in the or light candles for prayers in the sanctuary. And that's because, as a newcomer family, they had decided that once they reached safety, they would offer prayers to Allah in thanks for that. And they never imagined that that place would be a Lutheran church. Pastor Tula joked, right, they probably had no idea what Lutherans even are, right, Lutherans, but that was, again, a place in the community where they had a sense of connection, where there had been some support, some familiarity, and so they reached out to the church to have that place to light their candles. Now, what struck me about these two examples of hope or success is that these are not our traditional ways of tallying church success, right? This isn't about offerings or worship attendance or membership, but what a light of hope that these stories are. And as I was thinking of shining lights of hope, right, I also think of the prayer shawl ministry that has been such an important part of St. Peter's here. I haven't been here very long, but already I firsthand have witnessed the importance of this ministry for folks who are going through really hard times, right? That these shawls are a source of comfort to people who are dealing with really difficult situations. Jesus tells us, "Let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and praise your Father in heaven." Jesus doesn't say, "Let your light shine so that others may see your good works and become members of your church." I think we kind of wished it worked that way, but that's not what Jesus says. Jesus wants God's light to shine so that lives will be changed. And that includes our own, for our lives to be changed too, right? And this isn't something that is easy to measure. It's not a good sustainability plan for a community or a congregation, right? It's not going to ensure our future. But according to Jesus, this is what the beloved community is to be: the light of the world. And the thing is, as I was talking about in our children's time, the light, it doesn't come from us. This is not our light, not something that we have to give or bestow upon others. The light is the Spirit who is already at work in our community, in our hearts, through us. This light is always and already there. Unfortunately, sometimes we're just kind of good at getting in the way of letting the light do what it wants to do, right? Putting that basket over the light. But that light wants to shine. It is shining brightly and fiercely into the dim places in the world. And I think we can be really good at noticing all the things that we don't have, or the things that we feel that we're lacking, right? That we don't have enough people, we don't have enough resources, we don't have enough expertise or know-how to do the things that we see needing to be done in our community. And that might be true or partially true. There's maybe some truth in that. But Jesus didn't call people who had it all figured out. Jesus didn't call people who already knew what they were doing, right? He called fishermen to be his disciples. And the word disciple, it means to be a student, right? Disciples, they were there to learn from Jesus. That's why we're here too. We are here to learn. We're not expected to have it all figured out. It's okay if we try something and it doesn't have the impact that we hoped it had. It didn't maybe quite work out the way we'd envisioned, because that's part of learning too. Listening to our neighbors and their needs, taking a risk and trying something, not for what we hope to gain, but because shining light is what Jesus says our job is as disciples. This is why I think I found myself thinking about the Northern Lights this week, right? The wondrous and unpredictable and dynamic beauty of the Northern Lights. Because the thing about the Northern Lights, unlike a lamp or a flashlight, a street light, the Northern Lights don't serve any real function or purpose. right? They can't be monetized or controlled or exploited by humans. And they really have no purpose, I think, other than beauty and praise, right? And they are extravagant. And they're also kind of a community, right? This lights dancing together in the night sky. Because Jesus calls all of us together, us as a community, to let this light shine. For God's goodness to shine in us and through us. God, help us as a community for this light to shine in us and through us so that we can be a part of your work, blessing the world. For I know that we too long to smile and laugh, to gasp and to be surprised by the beauty and the wonder and the awe of God's goodness in the world. Amen. As you are able, I invite you to stand as we sing our hymn of the day, number 712, Lord, whose love in humble service.